And we're recording. So thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. My name is Kelsey Ducheneau. I'm the Natural Resources Director for the Intertribal Agriculture Council. Really excited to be on the IAC Cares webinar series hosting for you guys this afternoon from Eagle Butte, South Dakota. We have Mike Callicrate and Bob Lodder here on the call with us today. I'm not going to take up too much time because I know that we've got two experts in the industry. We look forward to learning a little bit more about mobile and modular meat processing facilities and what that might look like as we start to see more of these develop in our communities across Indian country. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike.
Oh, thanks, Kelsey. Happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. Let me get this share screen thing going.
Sounds great. And while you do that, I do just want to go ahead and remind everybody, we do have the question and answer feature available. If at any point you have a question, go ahead and pop it in there. We won't get to the questions until at the end in case the presentation does answer the question along the hour, but please shout them out as you've got them.
So Kelsey, can you see the screen okay?
Yep, it looks great on my end.
All right. So Kelsey, thanks for the opportunity to present today. And, you know, this realization that our food system has failed us has become very obvious during this COVID time. And so I've put together just a little bit of a slide presentation to go through some of the things I think we got to keep in mind if we do decide that we want to be part of rebuilding a better food system, one that's more geared to, serve people as opposed to big corporations, which is our industrial system that we have now. And so, COVID-19 exposed a failed food system that's abusive, unhealthy, inhumane, and incapable of feeding people. So my questions are, how do we become more food secure? How do we reduce and decentralize abusive market power? How do we ensure that farmers, ranchers, and workers earn living incomes? How do we rebuild our rural economies? How do we produce healthier and safer food? And how do we become more resilient? This is just a picture of our Ranch Foods Direct store in Colorado Springs on the afternoon of March 13th, Saturday, March 13th. And on the left is the Ranch Foods Direct meat cases and meat counter that are full. We've got about a 200-mile supply chain from the Kansas-Colorado border at St. Francis, Kansas, to Colorado Springs, where we have a cut plant and a couple of retail stores, and we do our distribution into hotel, restaurant, institutional trade from here as well. On the right is the King Soopers store here locally at Fillmore and Centennial. And the meat counters, the cases are essentially empty. And you might wonder, what are those few packages that are still there in the meat case? And one of them is a few pork products, but most everything in the case that remained was the fake meat products. So the real meat was already gone. And the cases remained this way for days. Took a while to restore any kind of inventory back into that big box retail store all across the Front Range, and I think it's true across America. So what we've got here is a situation, and it's been going on for many years, but we've got the big meat packers who have exerted their power, and as a result of the meat packers becoming more consolidated and concentrated over the years. In 1978, for example, when I started my first feedlot, I had as many as 20 meat packers I could sell to any given week. And then by 1998, December of 1998, I had no packers I could sell to. So I had 12,000 head capacity feedlot with 14,000 head in it. because I couldn't sell my cattle and I still had others coming in. And the Secretary of Agriculture had to force what's JBS now, was ConAgra at the time, to just buy all my cattle, and I end up closing my feedlot. But you can see what's happened as a result of the concentrated market power of the big packers is they've taken away from the rancher. It's much easier for the packer to buy cattle cheaper than to sell meat higher to a very also concentrated retail sector, which is the ones you all have heard about. You know, Walmart, Kroger, Safeway, now Whole Foods is one of the big ones since the Amazon purchase. And they have just taken way more than their share of what a competitive market would have allowed them to take. And so as of June 30th, we just hit the lowest share, the lowest producer share of the consumer beef dollar ever in history at 27%. And that's down from over 65% between, 1970 to 1975 area. And so what we've done is we've allowed the big packers to get more concentrated, more consolidated, become more powerful, and they have pushed the price down at the farm and ranch gate, while at the same time, consumers have paid more and more. In fact, that's reflected in that upper right-hand corner, the May 20th reported retail price for fresh beef. This is the average cuts that come out of an animal at $7.58 a pound. And that's up from $6.04 sort of pre-COVID in March. So that's a huge increase in the retail price, of which the producer got none of. In fact, the producer got less as a result. So the prices dropped significantly after COVID to producers and went up for consumers, which is proof positive of an unfair and overly concentrated marketplace. So 27% is the lowest percent ever. And basically, if the producer was still receiving that 65% of the retail dollar that he got back in the 70s, and then he should have been receiving about $1,960 more per head than the current cattle price offered. So what's the real opportunity here for ranchers thinking about selling beef instead of livestock? And let's just look at an actual example. There's 80 of these cattle. There are these finished steers weighing 1,437 pounds. There's 80 of these animals that came to St. Francis, Kansas for finishing. We're processing those animals, and all the meat is being sold direct to consumers as eighths, quarters, halves, and wholes. And so it's a very simple, fast processing, bone-in standard cut. And so what we've got is the 1,437 pound steer, carcass weight yielding 63.5% is 912 pounds. The retail meat yield on a finished, well-fed animal is going to be 47% on average if it's a standard bone-in cut. If it's not bone-in, if you're doing boneless, it's going to be a 5% reduction in the retail meat yield, plus a lot more added expense and time investment by the processor to accomplish that. So we encourage people to sell standard bone-in cut and keep it simple. So that gives you 675 pounds of retail weight. And let's use sort of the pre-COVID price of $6.75, not the $7.58 price. That generates $4,556 per animal in total revenue. Now subtract the slaughter fee of $125 and consider that slaughter fee is higher than it used to be because we're getting zero for the hides now. When I started 20 years ago, we were getting $70, $75 for a hide. Now they're worth zero. A case of just a highly concentrated marketplace reducing prices back to the independent processors. So let's put in a processing fee of 85 cents, which is what we charge for a standard bone-in cut. That's $775, and that's a really nicely packaged product that looks good. Carcass freight to the plant is $30. We're killing these cattle right where they're at, so there's no cattle freight. There's no freight on the cattle to get to the processing plant, just the carcass freight to get to our cut plant in Colorado Springs. Boxes are going to cost you about $2.50 a piece. And these are freezer boxes with holes in them for good air circulation, so we get it frozen well. That's $40. So total income after processing, this puts the product on a pallet and ready to load on a truck for your delivery to customers. $3,586 per animal. So divided by that live weight of 1437, we're looking at about a net income back to the farm and ranch gate or the feedlot or whatever, wherever those animals might have been finished, of $2.50 per pound. That is at the same time as the current live cattle market is at $95. So that's $155 more per hundredweight, or $2,227 more than the market is paying for those cattle. Now that's pretty unbelievable that could happen in a marketplace that's supposed to be regulated, that is supposed to prevent monopoly power and oligopoly power and monopsony power. And we simply have not had any enforcement of antitrust laws, and it's allowed these meat packers and big retailers to extract far, far too much out of the marketplace. So how do we build a safe, efficient, and profitable pathway to the consumer? This is a big challenge. A lot of people think they want to get in the business of selling meat, but most ranchers don't want to be retail meat salesmen. Most ranchers just want to ranch. They'd rather fix a fence than sell meat to a consumer, and I don't blame them at all. So I'm not saying that everybody has to do this, but I think enough people have to do it to where we can show the marketplace that we're not being treated fairly at the farm and ranch gate, and that there's a whole lot more dollars available for the producer and a better deal for the consumer if we break up the monopoly power and build these alternative pathways to the consumer. Not saying we're going to get rid of the industrial operators. They process a lot of animals, but let's at least build a parallel pathway to the consumer and show where the big guys are doing it wrong. They claim efficiency, and that is simply not the case, and we'll talk more about that. So if you're going to sell your beef direct or your lamb direct or your pigs direct to consumers, be ready to tell your story. How are you better than the industrial model? And when I asked myself that question back in 2000 when I first started selling meat, I thought, well, if I really wanted to produce a product that was better than what I'm producing now in this industrial model that I'm in, I'd get rid of the implants. I'd get rid of the performance enhancing drugs. Those drugs that make meat less tender, less flavorful, the consumers don't much care for them. I'd quit using those because it would benefit the meat quality. The other thing that I think that I thought about was, well, let's go with an Angus cow and put a Wagyu bull on that cow. And maybe we can do a heifer development program as part of the process. So we take Angus heifers, we breed them to Wagyu bulls, which calve very easily. And then those calves go into the meat program as half-blood Angus Wagyu, which will increase our meat quality significantly and put a lot more marbling into the meat. And so that's what we did. We started a heifer development program. I mean, we had 12,000 head feedlot. We had a lot of bunk space, turned part of it into pigs. So we also sell pork. And the pigs have been a very good enterprise for our operation in helping us to diversify it. But we still have a lot of empty pens because we will never again be feeding 12,000 cattle in this facility. We're much more interested in a different approach today than what we took, 40 some years ago when I got started in this business. And so in telling your story, what are you doing different? Tell your customer about your family. Tell your customer about your operation. In the Callicrate Cattle Company operation, it's about soil. We're committed to improving soil, building soil, replacing the soil that is eroded over the many years that industrial agriculture has been in place. And it's not just industrial agriculture, the modern style industrial agriculture we have, but farmers have been farming land that should never have been farmed for generations and decades, and we've had a lot of soil loss. So how do we bring animals back into the picture, diversify operations, use manure to build soil, and really make it a circular economy rather than the linear extractive type economy that the industrial model represents? It starts really on a person's farm or ranch and ends up in a big box retail store. So this is the story that we want to tell. We want to talk about healthy soil, which leads to healthy people and healthy communities. And we go so far in our operation, after we process our animals, we take the bones and we compost them along with the slaughter waste in the manure piles, and then screen that manure into a really nice compost product, with the bones then going into a retort where we make bone char. Then the bone char can go back into the compost mix as well. So we're putting a lot of nutrients back in the land. The big meat packers have to pay to have this stuff hauled off. We put it back into the soil, and it's done where those animals are produced. So what we're taking off, we're putting back plus more. A better, more direct and efficient option for producers and consumers wanting to know where their food comes from might be this mobile slaughter unit. And this mobile unit was sort of the second one we built, the 2.0 model. And in this particular mobile slaughter unit, which we put together at a firm up in Nebraska, this was actually an old IBP tram trailer that they hauled half carcasses in from small meat packers into the main IBP plants, where those carcasses were broke down into box beef. But once those small plants were put out of business by IBP and the other big meat packers that were cooperating with each other at the time, these trailers were parked in the weeds. We ended up buying 6 of them, converting them to mobile slaughter units. They're all gone now. But you're going to hear from Bob Lodder later, and he's making the absolute best well-designed trailers and modular units that are out there today that save you a whole lot of development costs and mistakes that we can potentially make. But this unit has a cooler on it that'll hold about 16 animals. And the thing that we did a lot different with this is we added a 6-foot section on the rear end, which is what we use, a quartering section and a docking station for a truck to just back up, and we roll the carcasses onto the transport trailer, which you'll see in a bit. But my point here with this slaughter trailer, it is not the kind of trailer that you want to run up and down the road in, doing a few here and a few there. It's too big, it's too expensive to pull around, and I think docking stations work well because you're typically going to be set up at a feedlot, maybe even perhaps a sale barn, and you're going to have a good corral system. This trailer comes with a portable corral system, a kill box. It is portable, but it doesn't get moved. And the point is, if you ever finish using this trailer, you don't want to use it anymore, you're going to step up maybe to a bigger unit, you can sell it. So it retains good value. But when we talk about a more efficient option, this one in particular, 4 men can do 16 animals a day. That's what the cooler holds. And then they transfer those carcasses into the transport trailer, which takes them into Colorado Springs. So 4 animals per man per day, basically. If you take Tyson's 2 biggest plants, the plant at Dakota City, Nebraska, that can do over 8,000 cattle a day, or the Garden City plant that can do over 6,000 cattle a day, and you divide that by their workforce, you're looking at about 1.56 animals per man per day. They're boxing that beef, and we don't box. We just simply produce the carcass. But my point is, why would you want to box it? If you're going to cut it up into the retail cuts, why wouldn't you bypass that middle step of boxing, the expense of boxing, and just cut it up directly into the retail cuts, and it's ready to go? So it's actually a much more efficient way to go, even though the big meat packers have gotten big by convincing Congress and lawmakers and law enforcement people that they're more efficient and that the consumer will benefit through their efficiency. And it's just simply not true. This trailer will use about 50 gallons of water, just under 50 gallons of water per head per day. The big packers are using 730 to 740 gallons of water per animal processed. So in many regards, a better option, more efficient. The slaughter waste from this trailer stays right on the farm. It gets mixed in with the manure, where it's then spread onto the fields or onto the pastures to increase our carbon sequestration and soil fertility. The water that we wash this unit down with goes into a catchment that is already existing that catches feedlot runoff. It's approved by the state of Kansas. So you've just eliminated two major expenses and potential problems in your slaughter operation. That is, what do you do with the slaughter waste, and what do you do with the discharge water? So we have no expense in that regard. The kill box, the animal goes into the kill box. We hoist it, we bleed it, we take it into the trailer through the front and out the back. So the live or the dead animal, the carcass prior to the hide removal goes into the front, and the carcass goes out the back. And we've got a skinning rack here that has actually a hide puller that's built right into it. We gut the animal, split it, give it a final acid rinse as an intervention for pathogens, and we put it in the cooler. One of the things that's a big advantage here with putting these carcasses in a cooler and transporting them as a carcass is we get the benefit of dry age. The benefit of dry age not only improves meat quality, but it also is the best pathogen intervention there is. University of Wisconsin did a study on E. coli 157H7, found 100% effective control of that pathogens through dry aging. When the big meat packers decided they were going to box beef, what they did is they packaged the pathogen in with the meat. And IBP admitted in 1996 that their biggest challenge going forward would be E. coli 0157H7, and that the industry was going to have a difficult time in dealing with that. And boy, have they ever. From Jack in the Box forward, it's a big problem that can be eliminated essentially with the dry aging process that this mobile slaughter, modular slaughter type approach takes. We needed more days. We didn't want the weather to be stopping us from killing. We had good demand through Ranch Foods Direct in Colorado Springs, and we really needed the consistency of being able to operate every day, all day. And so we moved this mobile unit inside a new building. And when we put up the new building, we made it big enough because we ended up with a new shop. We ended up with a nice bunkhouse to go along, and it just worked out really well to put this unit inside. Those are the totes, that the yellow and red bins there, what we haul our slaughter waste out with. Here's the kill floor now with the mobile unit. This is the other side of that trailer from what you just saw. That's our kill box directly in front of the trailer. We built that ourselves, as well as all of the metal work that you see. So basically we're killing that animal, bleeding it outside of the trailer, and removing the hide outside of the trailer. And then we're simply using the trailer to gut, split, and cool the carcasses. Here's the transport trailer that we use to haul carcasses to Colorado Springs. We have two of these. And so the trailer is always, there's an empty trailer or a full trailer backed up to the mobile unit all the time. And so we have the capacity then to kill 16 animals a day and transfer those into the transport trailer, which holds 45 animals. So increasing our capacity by a lot, and then only the carcasses make the trip, not the live animal. Here is our next phase, which is in construction right now. The mobile slaughter unit will be moved out. Now, this is something we feel confident we can do. This is a big investment for us, but we know our business is solid enough in Colorado Springs and along the Front Range that we can do this. And so basically what you see here is a carcass cooler added to the building you just saw. And this carcass cooler will hold 30 animals in the drip side and then 40 animals on the finished side prior to being quartered into the same transport trailers that'll take them up to Colorado Springs. And then at that point, we're probably going to have to look at double shifting at Colorado Springs to be able to process more animals through there. But the other option with this model is we've got room now where that trailer used to set inside that building to where we can put in a cut and wrap that would be a paper wrap, simple standard cut. All we need is basically a saw and a grinder and some tables, and we could do a fair amount of custom cut right in this same facility. You're going to hear more from Bob Lodder in just a minute, but Bob makes the best equipment out there. Lots of experience, lots of trial and error, and his product has just gotten better and better all the time. But this is really just a turnkey thing that if you decide you want to get in the business, you can bring these modular units in, mobile units in, and they're ready to go. So you'll hear from Bob in just a minute. What's the benefit really of slaughtering animals where they're at? In talking about efficiency, what if you don't have to spend $50 a head to transport that finished animal to a slaughterhouse? And your distance to the slaughterhouse as a producer has increased significantly over the last 30 or 40 years as the small packers have been put out of business. So it's the producer who really pays the freight on those animals to get into Garden City, Dakota City, Dodge City, wherever, Greeley, Colorado, wherever those plants may be. And so slaughtering animals where they're raised improves animal welfare because you don't have that long truck ride. Think about being an animal that traveled 600 miles from North or South Dakota to southwest Kansas. They're tired when they get there. They're dehydrated when they get there, and they get off the truck and greet 6,000 other animals they've never seen before. So less stress also means better quality meat, reduced travel distance. We ship 37% less weight if we're shipping carcasses as opposed to live animals. Carcass will yield about 63.5% of the live weight if they're finished. Slaughter waste becomes valuable soil nutrients. All of these are reasons why this model is better and more efficient, better for the land, better for the people than the big industrial model. And then increased rural employment, very, very important. If a man is able to process 4 animals a day, he's certainly worth more than what a worker's making at a IBP Tyson, JBS plant. So here's the other end, and this is where you really get the investment dollars put into the program. This is the processing piece. And we got very lucky in Colorado Springs. We bought an existing food service company that had all of the cooler, freezer, dock. It was just made to order. We got very, very lucky in getting this facility. But this is where you really invest a lot of dollars in concrete and steel and refrigeration equipment. And so this is what we call the Peak to Plains Food Distribution Hub in Colorado Springs, which houses Ranch Foods Direct. We own the facility. So the Colorado Springs Food Hub provides space for my meat processing as well as the custom processing we do for other people so that they can do what we do and sell direct. We also hold a fruit and vegetable distribution, CSA, SOCO, it's called the Southern Colorado Farmers Market pickup point every week here in Colorado Springs at this facility. And we do value-added production. So we have our own kitchen inside this facility where we make our own broth. The Mountain Pie Company's inside. They've got a full kitchen where they make their meat pies. We incubated a bread company here a few years back in our previous facility. So we're constantly trying to figure out ways of incubating new business and growing our local regional food systems capacity. Just a shot of the front side of that building. This is our retail store in Colorado Springs. It's very near where our original location was, where we had developed a lot of good business. And so when we left that area to the new food hub location, we wanted to keep a retail presence in that community, which is about 15 minutes north and west of where the food hub is. And so this has got a full fresh counter. We do some dry aging there, all on display to the consumer. It's got all things local in it. So it's got bread, it's got vegetables that are in season, fruit that's in season from the Western Slope, lots of value added products. And we also have a kitchen in this facility where we do a lot of prepared meals. And those are for sale in the store every day. Thinking about pathways to the market for people, let's look at the mail order possibility. Let's look at, consumers being able to understand better about where their food comes from. And this company called Biteable started a couple years ago here, was incubated here in Colorado Springs. And I'm very excited about it. They basically track your food from farm to plate. And Biteable is the platform that handles our mail order business for Ranch Foods Direct, which got very busy during the March COVID time. But I think there's opportunity in selling over the internet or mail order as people realize that they don't have that food available to them anywhere near where they live. And so with Biteable coming on board, Biteable is able to get good rates on shipping. The packaging is expert. The customer service is far improved over what we were doing. And so this is a very welcome new business here, which is located inside our food hub in Colorado Springs. They intend to do business otherwise, other places as well as they grow. But basically it's a blockchain. They track the animal from production through processing to the consumer's plate. And it's not top down, it's bottom up. And so the producer owns the data. It's the producer who is offering to the consumer what they want the consumer to see. And if you want to be secretive, you probably just won't get to sell much. But if you want to open up your operation and let people see in as to what you do and how you raise your animals, you will benefit through this blockchain type of approach. It's very important, though, to understand this is not top-down animal ID being forced on you by big meat packers and big retailers in partnership with USDA. This is something that benefits the producer and the consumer. So what's the first step in establishing the new local regional food infrastructure? And this is where I want to talk about where cities can get involved. And if consumers really want better food, if they want food security, if they want resiliency in their food supply, if they want to have stewards back on the land that care for soil, husbandmen that care for livestock, if that's what the consumer wants, then we need to build that infrastructure that serves that need. And so what's the first step? And I think it's city councils saying, look, we want local food. We want to build public markets. We want to build processing within these public market spaces that's owned by the community, not developers, not the rent collectors, but the community. And let's facilitate the connection between ranchers and consumers. And this is something that John Eichert has proposed when he talks about the local and community food utilities. And it's something we can go into a lot deeper later, but this is got huge potential to where if you're a rancher, all you've got to do is get your animal to a local slaughter facility, and that carcass then moves on into the city where the consumer can actually see it hanging in a cooler and cut up in front of them. And that public market can be as big and as it needs to be to serve whatever community it's located in. So this is a public market concept we worked on in Colorado Springs probably 7 or 8 years ago. And this was an old lumber yard that had been setting for 10 or 12 years. It was very blighted. And we had proposed a public market with the full carcass processing capacity, and it would have had a brewery inside. It would have had a milling operation for local grains that are being produced. It would have been a a major distribution point for the Arkansas Valley farmers who grow a lot of produce, but it didn't fly. It just didn't fly because the city would not get behind it. And basically the developer interests in Colorado Springs have been served over the consuming public's taxpayers' interests in Colorado Springs. And if you may remember Colorado Springs, if you read the book Fast Food Nation, Colorado Springs was at the center of that book as being a city that loved fast food and chain restaurants. And that is still the case today. So we haven't got our public market in Colorado Springs, but other cities have. The one that I like the most, that I've seen and spent time in, is the Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia. This is a publicly owned facility. It's part of the old train station, and it is amazing. When you walk in that market, it is buzzing. It's got a cheese making operation. It's got restaurants. It's got two meat businesses inside, and these are the primary businesses of these operators that are in this market. There's over 70 vendors in the market. Rents are extremely low. They loan you money if you need to improve your space at very low interest rates. This has really become the #1 tourist spot of Philadelphia, and generates an enormous amount of economics around in the city. Philadelphia, I think, as a general rule, favors independent small business over chains and Wall Street based businesses. So this is something that can be replicated around the country, made somewhat smaller for smaller communities, and probably not much bigger. It's probably 30,000, 40,000 square feet. So it's a very large market. So creating community infrastructure for eaters, growers, family farmers, ranchers, local businesses, separate and safe from big food and Wall Street, is our objective. We have to be able to avoid the people, the guys, the businesses, the corporations that are between us and the consumer as it currently stands. They've taken too much. They're not going to give it back. It's up to us to find a different pathway to the consumer. And I think one that can be far, far better in every regard, from the way the producer's treated to the way the workers in our facilities that process cattle are treated, and the way the environment's treated, the way the animals are treated. I mean, the consumer's going to get a better, higher quality product they can feel a lot better about. And so this is my objective and what I work for every day. And so Bob Lodder is up next. Bob?
Well, thanks, Mike. It's not the first time I've seen that. It's always very interesting, again, to get a refresher. Mike is really the go-to guy when it comes to fighting the monopoly that we've had in this country. And I certainly appreciate Mike for his passion and for his willingness to work for the industry in this way. So thanks again, Mike, for what you're doing. Yeah, as Mike said, we are in the business of providing an alternative. And yeah, our tagline is restoring local meat processing. That's really our mission, our company's mission. And we started way back in 2002, the first mobile, it's called a small plant, was approved by the USDA in Washington State. That's where I'm from. This unit was built by a small producer who had a vision to do something different. They were having to haul their animals from the San Juan Islands out to the mainland here in Washington State. Obviously, very expensive to do that, plus yeah, very disruptive in a lot of different ways. So they came up with the idea of building a trailer unit that could be moved from farm to farm, and then have the carcasses then sent back to the mainland for processing, which is what they did. They started doing that. They had the USDA approve it. So the USDA made concessions for the small plants, and that worked very well for that first user, which was a co-op established by these farmers in Washington State, and that co-op is still successfully running a very successful operation. So because that went well, the USDA obviously had to give approvals based on that precedent all through the country. So we have built about 35 of these mobile units since 2005 out here in Ferndale, Washington. A company called Tri-Van Truck Body is our manufacturer, and these units have been placed in in North America, as well as 3 other countries, Central America, South America, and Africa, operating very successfully. Every one of them is still operating, very heavily constructed, well built, and in operation. What you're looking at on this screen is kind of our flagship mobile unit. It's 36 feet long. It has a large drip cooler that can hold 15 head of beef, and the numbers that Mike was stating, 4 people doing 15, 16 head in a day would be similar to what we're doing in these units here. So these are all USDA compliant, so they can operate anywhere where the USDA does inspections, which is basically in every state. They're mandated to do that. You can go to the next slide, Mike. This just shows a few pictures on the farm. So you need, in order, again, to be inspected by the USDA, which is really the way you want to go. That's kind of the gold standard to be able to sell your product retail in any retail market, as well as across state lines. You need to have a restrainer and a humane handling system in place. And so that the first picture, you can see where the restrainer is. So typically you're using a captive bolt gun or a rifle, and the animal falls, and then you will drain the blood outside of the unit in this case, and then the animal is washed off, pulled up into the unit, and it's harvested. We typically have a hide puller installed in the unit, and we are also now building the units with a kill and bleed module, which you'll see coming up here shortly. So this is the same, basically the same design, layout, construction as what you just saw on a trailer, and this is in a modular format. So this unit would sit on a concrete pad or on concrete pilings, and we would have this then coupled to the rest of the modules, which you'll see on the next slide. So this is just a breakaway, so you can artist rendering of what it looks like all together. So you can see the animals are collected outside in pens, and then this first section there is where the animal is brought in. That's the kill and bleed section, and the animal is knocked, falls down. It's bled on the floor. There's a grating under that floor with a large tank, so you can collect all your blood, and then you will put that animal onto the rail, and it's pulled into the next section where the hide is removed, and the animal, the evisceration happens. Your carcass is split into half, and then it's railed into the drip cooler right there, where you will hold that. You will hold the carcass in the cooler for 24 hours to get it down to 38 degrees overnight. And then there's a side unloading door so that you can then put it into your aging cooler that typically has 3 full rails and then a bypass rail. So if you're not needing to age all the carcasses, for example, if you have a cull cow like a dairy cow or something, and you're just going to turn that into hamburger, you can rail that one all the way through. And then into the next module, which is your cut and wrap, where further processing takes place. So you can see the meat rail runs all the way through. So your whole, it's basically a packing plant in miniature form right there. And then the last module there is the finished goods freezer, where you could have pallet racks, pallets on the bottom, and then racks above it where you could have boxed product. And then out the door into a shipping truck. So this shows each outline there is a module. The first big one where it says Friesla on it, that's basically the kill and bleed and the harvest module. That's the main unit, and then it branches off into the other modules that become your finished processing. So your aging cooler, cut and wrap, and finished goods. And then the next slide will show that if you want to add capacity, we have knockouts on the sides of those units that are already, they're pre-constructed, so that you just basically take a saw and cut out those holes, and it's already framed in, so that you could then introduce on the sides there, on the branches, you can introduce additional modules. So those were all, basically it's a plug and play expansion. So you can see how it just goes on like that. And if needed, we can also put modules on the other side. So we have the ability to go from a starter system of 75 head. This is based on beef, for example. These can also be used for pork, for goat and sheep, bison, etc. So you can have a starter system of 75 head a week, and then go up to 225 head per week with the expanded system. Everything is modular. It's built, all the construction is built the same as our harvest unit that you saw on the initial slide. Heavy duty aluminum body construction, based on our almost 20 years of experience in the harvest industry. We feel like we have a very good system that will last many years. And over and above just the equipment, then we also have a USDA expert that was involved in the initial approval. Dr. Greg Sherman, he's on our team. We have a process engineer with a lot of experience. We have master butcher with experience. So we can help you with implementation and training. We can do as little or as much as you would like, but maybe I'll just leave it at that. And if there's questions, we can certainly get into them. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, wow, wonderful, very comprehensive information shared by you both. I really appreciate that. We did have several questions come in both on the Facebook feed and the Zoom Q&A feature. So I'm just going to kind of go through them. There was a couple of comments. If you could just recap briefly or even direct us to where we might be able to find more information regarding how you handle the slaughter waste on your operation, Mike, or perhaps where you've seen slaughter waste be handled in a good way with your facilities, Bob, that would be helpful to those listening.
Okay. Elsie, we're a feedlot, and so we feed cattle, and we've got manure, which is the ideal medium for composting slaughter waste. So basically, we haul the manure out of the pen and pile it over in the compost area, which is also a controlled area. So the runoff from that area has to be contained and captured. So it's all within the feedlot permit that the state of Kansas issues. And so we just bury the slaughter waste every day in that row of manure that is set there, that is placed there for the purpose of in the slaughter waste. And then it'll get turned probably 3 times as it gets closer and closer to the screening operation. And we've got a big rotary screen that works very well to get the bones out and leave us with a really nice compost mix, which then is applied on our pastures and fields through not a regular manure truck, but a spreader that is specifically designed to handle compost. So that's how we handle it. But I've seen slaughter operations get in trouble because they couldn't get rid of their slaughter waste. Maybe they're too close to the city. They couldn't have the compost. They didn't have the biomass they needed to compost, like wood chips or cottonseed hulls or whatever biomass that might be available in an area. Some places don't have it. So feedlots are the ideal place for these modular or mobile units to operate. In a sale barn, there's empty sale barns all over the country that have been shut down and they're gone. There's 85,000 feedlots that no longer have cattle in them. So if you're looking for a place to put one of these, there's some choices out there for you.
Yeah, and I can just add to that or echo also what Mike said about using, if possible, using the offal and so on, and even the hide and the bones, and mixing it up with your manure pile. It's obviously the best way to go. Use that compost and complete that cycle, right? Put it back on the soil. And in the cases where you can't do that, you have to bring your offal away, you would have to contact a rendering company and find out about that. But I would imagine most of your applications for the folks that are on the line would be, you would be rural enough where you would have either a feedlot available or you would have a compost manure pile available. So
one other point, feedlots have had to move to composting, dead animal composting, because in many areas there is no dead animal pickup anymore. The rendering companies have also, concentrated and bought each other out to where we really don't have many choices. And so most of the feedlots that are permitted also have a permit to compost their dead animals.
Thank you very much for that information. There was a question in regards to, some of our listeners are in areas that have a limited access to USDA inspectors. There's not as much availability and it can sometimes create a bottleneck, so they've heard. Can you speak to this a little bit, and if there's been any solutions to overcome that in rural parts of the country that have decided to establish these facilities?
USDA is short on staff. USDA is short on funding. They've got 8,000 employees. They've got 8,000 inspection employees out there that they're trying to manage, and it's difficult. If you're a USDA inspected plant, you've got more expense than the plant that might be state inspected or the plant that might be a custom plant. So you've got a HACCP plan. You've got some rules and regulations that you have to follow. You've got the Humane Slaughter Act. There's a lot to keep track of. And what I would like to see as a result, one of the other efforts as a result of realizing how broken our food system is let's build back our state inspection capabilities. I think that we can support some new state inspection efforts that will exceed USDA as far as food safety is concerned. And the best one I know of is Dr. Dillon in Texas. It's a state inspection program. And the thing that's unique about Texas is they not only have the rural communities with the livestock, but they also have the urban centers. So you really don't have to cross the state line to be able to market everything you can produce. Texas has significant urban centers, but you get into a place like Kansas, we're 400 miles from Kansas City. We're 180 from Denver. Denver, a bigger urban center. And so I've got to cross the state line. I don't have any choice. But if we can start building back some of these state inspection programs, and make them exceed USDA. I mean, we can prove that we can produce safer food than the big meat packers do with the USDA inspection. Let the big meat packers use USDA for their export markets, and I'd say otherwise, let's get state inspection back again and build these rural communities back along with the health of the economies and the urban centers that are related to those economies. So I'm all in favor of expanding those 27 states that we currently have that have USD or have state inspection, maybe not fully effective right now, maybe underfunded right now, but I'm saying let's support state inspection and then also cooperation between states to where we can cross state lines. It's just not fair that foreign countries like Brazil, JBS, foreign-owned Smithfield, the Chinese-owned pork company, the biggest one in the U.S., they have access to every single state in the union from foreign countries, and yet states can't ship across each other's state lines. That's not right. We might have to get pretty political to get this done, but I think it's the time.
Wonderful.
The USDA is required to provide inspectors to you. So as difficult as it might be, for them to make arrangements, they're required by law to provide you an inspector. So once you go through the process of applying for a grant of inspection, which we can help with, well, and you have to put a HACCP plan together. But once that is done, yeah, they're required to provide you an inspector, and at no cost to you either. If there's overtime, obviously there's going to be a cost, but that's really not something that should be a concern for you. You have to get your grant of inspection, put your system into place, and they are required to look after you.
Great, thank you. And I did see a question. What's the staffing need for 75 versus 100 head slaughter? Bob, I saw you write 12 to 20. Is that your answer to that question?
So approximately 12 people for the 75 head, and then approximately 20 for double that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And it depends a little bit on the mix of product and what type of finishing you're doing.
Okay. On the knockout sections where it seemed like you could kind of plug in more additional spots, what are we looking at for that, as well as for the mobile harvest unit for production time? What's the time till delivery if a community were to purchase one or invest in one of these?
Yeah, it's somewhat of a flexible answer I have to give, because right now, of course, we have a lot of interest and orders. So right now we're sitting about 6 to 7 months lead time from the date of order, and that could increase. It probably will. So I think if you allow for 6 to 8 months is probably good. We try to we're pushing as hard as we can, but we want to do it right as well. So
absolutely. And is there a place, perhaps on your website, where the cost breakdown of the different units is available?
Yeah, not so much on our website. Probably the best is on our website. We have a place where you can request information, leave us your contact, all your information, and then we get back to you with a full information package. Or you can give us a call as well. We have a phone number that you can call in on, and we're big on spending time on the phone with folks as well to go through everything with them. So yeah.
All right.
Hey, Kelsey, on Bob's slides on the various options, there is a rough number there around that would cost. It's on the. People want to go back and take a look.
Yes, for your basic system starting out, if you went with the complete 75 head per day system to start, you're looking at a budget number of 1.3 million. And if you figure on, maybe you have some costs as well on your end for site prep and some transportation costs and whatnot, 1.5 million is a good number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can these facilities be used for custom work for individual livestock owners as well, or is
Yeah.
this the best option for market purpose only?
No, absolutely, and Mike can probably speak to that too. But no, we would even suggest that, you know, if you, let's say you're doing 2 or 3 days a week of your own product, open it up then for custom work and pay off the equipment and the system quicker, right? So absolutely, there's a huge need. We're getting calls from all over the country, and we're hearing stories of plants being out 2 years now already. So there's a huge, if you put a system in, you'll keep it busy, put it that way.
Great.
Kelsey, about half of what we do at our operation is custom for
Okay.
other. And, you know, Ranch Foods Direct is all about connecting the producer to the consumer. It's not just about the Callicrate operation. We want to help as many others as we can. And I would hope others that put in these kind of systems would feel the same.
Absolutely. What soil health changes are you seeing in the application of your compost to the soil?
Well, Kelsey, I can't really tell you that I see much difference over what I've done for 45 years. We haven't used commercial fertilizer in 45 years because we have cattle and we have manure, and there's nothing better for your soil. So, but you will see a significant difference depending on your soil health currently. If you've got some soil that needs some help, I mean, you put a 2 to 5 tons of compost on and it transforms it. It's amazing what happens. And of course, we buy into and subscribe to all of the cover crop, no-till, essentially, basically try to do no-till, you know, keeping a cover on that land and not disturbing that underground biological community that exists there. Let's let them do their work and eliminate a lot of the input costs that the industrial model requires.
Wonderful. Is there any insight that you can offer as to potential grants or funding mechanisms for purchasing these facilities for rural communities?
Bob, you might be better at that than me.
Yeah, right now there definitely are grants available through the CARE Act, as you probably know. So federal grants are available. You can contact us, and I do have some information from, for example, the state of Wyoming put a document together that listed grants available for some different states. And so there are funds available there, but also then through the USDA as well. There's some regional grants and so on. So yeah, we can connect you, but I would say the easiest is just to from your side, just to connect with your agricultural state agricultural department and inquire. But yeah, the money is out there. Yeah.
All right. And I see one more question. With the established sections that connect together, would you be able to segregate halal processing? Any experience with this?
Yeah, I think they're probably referring to the kill area. I would assume anyway. And yeah, all I can say there is we would be able to accommodate that for sure in the system. But I personally don't have a lot of experience with that. We've had this question, but I'm not too familiar with what the differences are. Mike maybe has some more experience there. I don't know.
I don't, Bob. I have no experience with halal. I do have some experience with kosher, but your system would accommodate that with no problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one more question. Are you able to market the compost?
Yes, The compost is selling for about $25 a ton.
Okay.
You know, so yeah, we market it. We sell it in 1 yard, or not 1 yard, 1 cubic foot bags through our retail operation and food hub in Colorado Springs. We sell a fair amount of it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Market compost.
Great. Well, I'm going to, it seems as though all the questions have really slowed down. Could I get you guys to go ahead and type your contact information or your website, maybe if you've got it, into the chat so that all of our attendees can easily reference that. Again, I just want to thank everybody that joined us as a participant today for taking the time out of your afternoon to learn more from Mike and Bob. And to Mike and Bob, both, thank you for sharing your expertise and your experience. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today, and we look forward to continuing to build our friendship as we, work to solve the issues that exist with the food system as we start to build something up better throughout COVID and eventually post-COVID. Again, if you have questions, please reach out to us at indianag.org. You can learn more about what Intertribal Ag Council is doing to promote Indian agriculture on our website. Again, that's indianag.org. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Good job.